Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Boruto 2 Blue Vortex speculation video. So this is going to be my thoughts heading into chapter 15, which is coming out in about a week. I think it's 6 days specifically. I think it's the 20th like usual that we're going to get it. Of course, we'll start off with, usually I time these days in line with the sneak peek page that they officially put out. So this is the official Naruto site. And in the news, they of course have the one preview page. It's not officially translated here, but we have a rough fan translation of it as well. But what's super interesting about this is that if I was to do my speculation video prior to seeing this page, I would have said that the chances of Boruto and Kawaki talking in the following chapter would have been very, very low. So the fact that they've shown us a preview page of the two of them talking and it seemingly being a quite important conversation is beyond kind of what my expectations were. It obviously speaks to the idea of Boruto in the series doesn't have a really clear-cut base of operations in the sense that he needs to interact with the characters in the Leaf Village, but he can't stay in the Leaf Village, so he's constantly back and forth, in the village, out of the village. He has to escape the village, now he has to go back in. I wonder, does he even leave? Or does he just teleport from the prison straight to where Kawaki is and they have this conversation? Stuff like that's quite interesting. But the translation that I've seen of this basically gets across the idea that Boruto tells Kawaki, you need to become stronger no matter what. It's very important. He's definitely talking about sort of like the Kashin Koji timelines type thing of like, normally you'd be trained by Naruto and you'd get to the point where you need to be. But you know, in that case, you'd have to unseal him, and we don't really have that much time. Basically, it seems like Boruto is about to either tell him something, or he directly says, I'm going to train you. I'm not sure what exactly the translation is towards the end, but he's definitely leading into this idea of, I'm going to tell you a bunch of stuff right now, and you are going to make your mind up about this either now or at some point in the future, but either way, it's what you will do. So kind of let's cut to the chase and just get you trained up. Seemingly because based on the sequence of events that are required to get to a good outcome, likely needs Kawaki at a good power level so he can be very useful in the fight against the Divine Tree characters coming up. Whereas as we see right now, Boruto is so much more powerful than Kawaki, that fight wouldn't even be interesting if it was to happen. And you know, Boruto's really the only one who's really capable of potentially fighting against the Divine Tree characters, and so we need someone like a Kawaki on that level, and this sets the stage as well for Boruto Kawaki stuff in the future as well. So interesting stuff here about how exactly they go about this, in the sense that like by the end of the chapter, are we going to be in that sort of situation where Kawaki agrees to be trained by Boruto, and we sort of really commit to the idea of straight away we're putting Boruto Kawaki sort of on hold until we deal with the Divine Tree characters, and then we can get around to that. We can finally get around to the sort of the chapter 1 flash forward sequence of Boruto versus Kawaki. So with that in mind, let's quickly go over the chapter 14 sort of key points so we know what, you know, in this volume of 2 Blue Vortex, what we're dealing with, what happened last chapter, because we're going from basically the second of 4 chapters in a volume, and chapter 15 is going to be the third of 4 in a volume. So chapter 16 will be the volume ending chapter. So yeah, one of the key things we found out was that Jura is not based on anyone. So speculating about, oh, what characters captured in a tree to make Jura. No, it seems like he is the kind of original. He is the Ten Tails' actual individuality, it seems. So that's kind of interesting, and they definitely get across. The main threat is him. When things go wrong, it's because Jura defeats Boruto, and that's an interesting setup. And we also get this interesting dynamic where Ino refuses to help Shikamaru do things against regulations, where obviously Shikamaru has more or less, you know, broken through to a certain degree the omnipotence and is at least able to logic himself out free of it. Ino they haven't really brought her in on that, and so she's finally kind of decided to put her foot down of like, no, I'm not doing things that the village doesn't allow us to do. So Shikamaru is definitely put in a bit of an interesting situation going forward, where a lot of stuff is happening. He is the leader of the village, but he's maybe beginning to make some choices that a lot of the other people think are kind of odd, and he might be punished for them, but there's enough action taking place and they know he's a skilled tactician that I guess he'll get away with it for at least for the next while, which is kind of interesting. But I like that there is a Shikamaru arc going on there of like, he's the reluctant sort of fill-in Hokage, but he doesn't really want to be. It's an interesting one. Boruto also, when he has the interrogation, has the opportunity to just start to speak more openly and plant the seeds in everyone else's minds that Kawaki has lied about things, and do you not find it weird that this is the case? But he basically doesn't really do that. He doesn't lie. He doesn't tell the full truth, perhaps, and just be very, very open, but he doesn't lie about anything. He just doesn't say the full scope of what he could say about Kawaki, but he does reveal stuff like, say, Naruto and Hinata are still alive. He won't give away his source, but also, yeah, he is not really trying to convince anyone to turn against Kawaki. I guess it's because, to a certain degree of this, he knows he needs Kawaki to be in a sort of stable position in the village until the threat passes, and then we could deal with the Boruto Kawaki more personal situation. So Boruto definitely has the logic of the situation in his mind about what order things need to be done in, because it would be chaos, I think, if he tried to turn the village against Kawaki, reverse the omnipotence before we deal with an incoming threat that could happen at like any time. So I think it's just a matter of that. We see Mitsuki brought in by Shikamaru to help orchestrate Boruto being freed, which works, and it seems like Mitsuki mostly gets away without really bringing suspicion on himself. Konohamaru initially is like, wait, did that just happen? No, there's no way it actually was the case, so they seem to have gotten away with it for now. But Mitsuki, will be interesting to see what they do going from here. Will he just be on Boruto's side going forward? Or is it going to be more that we do have a few sort of on Boruto's side people still in the village, and that's an important thing to get across. Yeah, they get across, yeah. Shikamaru is going to face consequences for Boruto getting away, but what exactly is going to happen, and with the other stuff that happens in the chapter, is there even time for this? Because Kankuro contacts Shikamaru and reveals that Gaara and Shinki were taken down, and Shinki has been captured and turned into a tree. And this directly leads to the birth of Ryu, the fifth Divine Tree character that's been teased for like the last 2 chapters, and we would expect, I suppose, in the coming chapter to maybe learn something about him. So this is the real threat here, is that it was already a bit of an issue with just the few that we had. Now there's another one, and it's still the case that very few characters are at the level to face any of these other characters. So it definitely brings the sand into play and opens up the door to a couple more characters joining the kind of story, because we're going to need a pretty sizable group of characters, I think, to take down 5 key villains. And so the likes of Gaara being brought into play, Kankuro and stuff like that is a good thing in my mind. So, yeah, that's all the stuff that happened in Chapter 14. So let's get into the speculation overall. So, the first one here is obviously preview page again. Boruto and Kawaki talking, and it seems like Boruto is beginning to maybe tell the truth to Kawaki about Kashin Koji. Because again, remember, Kawaki is probably the only one who's actually has a clue that Boruto, the person he's working with, is Kashin Koji. So I'm guessing Boruto probably realizes that and just mostly can come clean about that, because, you know, Kawaki knew Kashin Koji before a lot of stuff happened. So bringing him in on this is important, because for Kawaki to achieve his overall goal to get rid of all Ototsuki's, he's going to have to get rid of the Divine Tree characters first. I think they're just really committing to that, as that is the thing they're doing in the story, is that we're not going to do Boruto versus Kawaki until this is dealt with. And for that to happen, we have to not have Kawaki constantly be very aggressive towards Boruto and like capture him. The village must capture him at all costs, being very defensive around Boruto. He has to, I think, calm down about that for the next while. Then we can get to the big character conflict. So it seems like either Boruto is going to train Kawaki maybe directly, which would be very interesting, or Kawaki is just going to be sort of brought into the fold with Boruto and Kashin Koji, because they probably need Kashin Koji to help maybe facilitate some of the training, because if they just do it Boruto Kawaki, you get this awkward situation where like a lot of Kawaki's power set is based around the karma, and are they committing to just he needs to be really really good at the karma, or are they trying to bring up his underlying ninja skill level to a really good point? Where he's already maybe not the greatest at that at all, so you need a lot of progress on that side of things. So what are we actually trying to do? Because Boruto effectively can't train Kawaki at the whole karma stuff, because it'll activate and then Boruto will be at risk, but also we haven't really got into that, the full scope of what that exactly means. We haven't addressed Momoshiki into Blue Vortex yet, so there's a few questions that need to come up, which makes me feel that probably Kashin Koji will be brought into play here as like to help facilitate Kawaki's training as well, because of course most of the information about Boruto potentially revealing to Kawaki that this needs to happen comes from Kashin Koji, so it's more meaningful, I think, if you do bring him into play, and there's still going to be animosity between the two, especially Kawaki towards Boruto, so you probably need a middle ground with these characters to make this dynamic work. But the point that they're making is just that Kawaki needs to be much more powerful to face off against the Divine Tree characters, that they're clearly getting across this idea that as part of the sequence of events that needs to happen to lead to a good guy victory, it requires that Kawaki be trained to a very high level, so he's capable of defeating, I guess, some of these characters. Because if he's not, they go in down a very key member, and it gets very complicated and frustrating to go anywhere. And they're definitely getting across that if that doesn't happen, the planet will be consumed, effectively. Then, this is more just logistics of the situation. Where are they going to do the training? Is Boruto constantly going to have to infiltrate the village to train Kawaki? Is Kawaki going to be allowed to leave the village on his own to potentially train in secret with Boruto and or Kashin Koji? Is it going to be in Kashin Koji's secret base that we've seen? Or what? What way is this actually going to work? And then, of course, will Kawaki even agree with it? Or will they go with the idea that he refuses it here in the heat of the moment, and it will take time for him to eventually realize that he needs to take Boruto up on whatever offer he's eventually given. So there's a bunch of logistic stuff that needs to happen there, just about the location positioning of characters, because like I said, the Two Blue Vortex has been very based around Boruto appears, then he leaves, he appears, and then he leaves, and there's no stability to where like Boruto's location is, just because of the omnipotence situation. Next, are we going to get some initial characterization for Ryu? Or Ryu, I don't know what way they're going to do with the pronunciation. But anyway, the big thing with these Divine Tree characters, obviously, is are they going to reveal who his target is? All of them have a specific target that seems to be someone who is important to the person captured in the tree that Divine Tree character is based on. So for Ryu, who's based on Shinki, Gaara would make the most sense because it's his father figure, and maybe because of the way they addressed the whole situation of like Gaara was defeated, as was Shinki, but Shinki was the one transformed into the tree. I guess it opens up the door to Gaara as a key character having a little bit of a redemption arc of training up himself, maybe getting the key information, and being involved in the fight to effectively free his son from the situation here. I'm assuming they will continue to do what I feel the obvious setup has been, of team up multiple characters to go off against each of the Divine Tree characters. So maybe like Gaara with his brother and sister, maybe even Shikamaru involved on this side of things as well. But then Shikamaru also could be involved with, because obviously his son is going to be related to the Moegi kind of situation as well. So it's an interesting one on that side of things as well, just to see what organization they do, how heavily involved the sand is like actually going to be, which is part of this final topic that I have here. Which is Shikamaru. Shikamaru has been a pretty large focus, I would say, of this current arc, of like a key character that Boruto has managed to convince the reality of the world is different from, you know, what he thinks is the case. And they're definitely getting across this idea of Shikamaru is frustrated about not being able to convince everyone necessarily, but realizing Boruto is in the right about this, and how does he balance being the leader of the village while also supporting Boruto. So is the focus for the village going to be punishing Shikamaru, capturing Boruto again, or working with the Sand Village? Because again, this coming up obviously distracts. Like, we don't know what the elders' view on the Sand Village contacting them is. It obviously makes the issue more of a worldwide issue rather than just one village mostly being affected. But it affects the entire world. It affects the whole planet. So I'm assuming everyone will eventually get brought into play. But do I expect the other Kages to get brought into play? Might be a few too many characters. Are we far enough in the story to do that again? I don't actually know. And then, yeah, this is a family connection for Shikamaru, because of course he's married to Tamari, and, you know, it's Gaara who suffered the loss, and his son is the one at play here. So of course Shikamaru, I'm guessing, would want to jump and help the Sand Village in some way. But again, logistics. Who's going where? Are we just communicating with each other? Gaara going to come once he's recovered? Are we going to go to the Sand Village to investigate what happened over there? Because I think we still don't know the situation when it comes to how do you actually free someone from the tree. We know it's possible, but I don't think we've got the mechanics yet. Is it as simple as just if you... Oh no, it's not, because they did defeat Hidari, but it doesn't seem like Sasuke was defeated. So it definitely relates to the, what is it, the soul bulb. What's the exact terminology there? The soul core bulb thing that that are inside these characters. I'm guessing it's something like you have to defeat them and then take that soul bulb back to the tree, and you can do something like that, and that's how you free the character. So it ultimately requires you to defeat the character, but defeat them in a way where you can safely get the core to the tree. I think that's probably going to be how they do it, just to kind of simplify the situation. But we'll see what's actually going on here. Because I suppose the question is the battlefield once again just going to be the Leaf Village or the outskirts of the Leaf Village, or are we doing this somewhere fancier? Like, that might be where maybe we do go to the Sand Village, and it is maybe the next big battle in or around the sand, just to change up the location a little bit. That could be sort of interesting, because then it suddenly opens up the door to, like, Boruto isn't, like, banished from the Sand Village, and that could create a bit of an interesting situation. We have to see, of course, what exactly happens. Plus, there's other stuff in the background, like Amado was brought back into play. We're waiting for him to do something more significant. Plus, a lot of the other characters still have arcs going on. Like, Ada wants to talk to Boruto as well. So given that he's going to at least have a conversation with Kawaki, before or afterwards, is Ada going to get a chance to speak to Boruto, which could be interesting as well. You know, there's stuff with, like, Himawari that we're waiting to see. We want to see some Sarada stuff happen as well. And, like, even kind of beyond that, it's just, like, all of the Divine Tree characters, like, they need to set up those dynamics a bit more. Like, the bug one, whose name we recently got, we haven't really maybe overly set up that idea. Is it going to be as simple as just basically, like, Demon and Ada against the bug Divine Tree, and that's it? Because obviously we get the obvious ones, like Konohamaru and Moegi's team against Matsuri. You know, there's interesting ones like that, but, you know, there's more work that needs to be done, because there is quite a few characters at play here, and oftentimes the chapters don't use the characters super well. Like, I found it a little bit frustrating in chapter 14 that the preview page was Sakura, but that was the only page that she was in like the entire book. Like we didn't get any reaction of Sakura to what's happened or what's happening to Sasuke. We didn't have Sarada and Sakura interacting. It was just Inojin's going to be okay, and it makes sense that Sakura is the one overseeing that. And it was actually more Ino who got a little bit of the spotlight kind of coming out of that stuff, because it was like her concern for her son overrides any sort of like, I'm going to scheme with Shikamaru in the background or whatever. So they're my thoughts heading into chapter 15. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts are. What do you think is going to happen with regards to the preview page that we have? What is this going to lead to? Is it Boruto training Kawaki or something more than that? And what other stuff do you think will happen in the next chapter? As we're in a little bit of a kind of calm before the storm moment, because we're expecting a little bit of like stuff to be like moved around a bit before the next big fight takes place. But what do you think is going to happen? So yeah, that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.